Hey guys, Dragan here from MuseShop.net, and today we're talking about the Filterable Portfolio Thumbnails widget, one of the most requested widgets by Muse designers. And what the widget does, it lets you create a portfolio section which you can filter by categories. And it has this beautiful animation each time you filter your categories. It's completely responsive and has a very nice effect for each of the portfolio thumbnails. So let's go over the basics. These are the components of the widget. First we have the menu, that's where we control our widget. Then we have the menu items. Then we have the menu wrapper, which lets you create a custom header for your portfolio section, so you can adjust it to your site. And of course we have the thumbnails with individual portfolio items, and each thumbnail has a thumbnail heading and a thumbnail paragraph. So let's head to Muse and see how the widget works. First you need to drag the widget on the canvas, and since Muse 2017 CC, if you click here on this plus icon while you drag the widget on the canvas, you will automatically create the breakpoints that we've created for you, which will save you a lot of time for resizing and repositioning. So you can notice over here I have the 1920 breakpoint and I don't have anything else, but if I click on this and drag my widget and release it, it automatically creates the MuseShop.net default breakpoints. Let's align it and let's see how the widget works. First we have the categories. You can have up to 16 categories for your portfolio, and first what you need to do is to set the number of categories. I'm going to keep it at 4, and the structure of the categories goes as follows. First we have all categories, and that's always present. What it means is that you get a default category that contains all the portfolio items. And then you have the custom categories, which you can rename to anything you like. What I've done here is I've created a featured category because I want some of the portfolio items to be featured and I want them to load first when the page loads, which we can set later. Then I have UE design, photography and graphic design. And notice here where it says the category to display on page load, and I've set it to 1. So I've set my category 1, that's the featured, to display when the page loads. So I'm all set with the categories. Now we have the basic item settings. We have an option to open links in new tab or in the same tab. I've kept it in the same tab, and what this means is that when you click on a portfolio thumbnail, it will take you to a page. We wanted to give you a complete freedom of designing your own portfolio item pages, so you could integrate this widget in your website completely. And then we have the number of portfolio items. You can have anywhere between 12 and 60 portfolio items, and based on this number you tell the widget which of these options to enable. So since I've set it to 12, I can only input items 1 to 12. If I set it to 60, all these options would be available. Now let's move on to inserting items and linking them to categories. So I'm gonna open this section and I can start inserting items. You have the file load option here, so I will just show you how the process works. I have some sample images over here, so let's load this image. And one thing to have in mind is that every time the widget reloads, it adds 4 pixels in height to the widget. That's a bug inside Muse, so if you have neatly sorted content below the widget, the best thing to do is to drag the widget outside of the page content. So when it pushes, it won't push your content below. Since I don't have anything over here, I can continue working like this. Now see, nothing has happened, and that's because the first image isn't set to be in the featured category, and as you can see, the featured category is active at the moment. So let me change that. The featured category is number 1 as you can see. And how you assign your portfolio items to the categories is you simply enter a category number over here, and you can assign each portfolio item to multiple categories simply by putting a comma and a space between the numbers. So let's say I want this item to be in the category 2 and 1. I want it to be in the UE design, and I want it to be featured. So I would say 2, comma, space 1, and it will update. You can see it over here, but now we have 5 items in our featured category, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna remove one of the items from the featured category. I'm just going to say for this second item, let's just keep it in the second category and not in the first. And there is one more important step to do when you're finished with adding all your portfolio items, and that is to adjust the height of the widget. And it's great because you have a preview over here. So what I do is I drag the height to be less than what I can see over here. So I'm going to drag it like this and let it snap to its own height. And after it does that, if it doesn't load the preview neatly, you can just add 1 pixel over here and everything will be okay. Great. I have a tip for you, and that's the number of items. Because the widget is responsive, it will sometimes have 4 columns, sometimes 3, sometimes 2, and sometimes 1 column. So the golden number you want to use when creating a section like this is 12. So let's say you have 3 categories. The best thing you can do is load 12 images for each of those categories, and then if you have a featured category, also have 12 items in that category, and by that you avoid having a lone thumbnail in the next row appear. So let's say I have 4 categories in the featured section. If I go to the next breakpoint, when it changes to 3 columns, this guy over here will go down below, and it will end up being alone in this row over here. And when you have 12 images, they will always have full rows, whether it's 4 columns, 3 columns, 2 columns, or 1 column. So that's my tip for you. Always use 12 items. So let's go over it again. I loaded my file and I assigned the categories to it. Remember, you can have 1 category or you can have as many as you like. Just use the numbers that correspond to your categories. If I wanted my item to be in the photography, I would have wrote number 3 over here. And let's see the other options for the thumbnails. We have the item heading and the item subheading or paragraph. That's what I explained over here. This over here is the heading and this is the paragraph. Then we have the alt text. That's for SEO. It won't show up in the live site, but it's good for search engines, and that's where you want to describe your image and maybe use a keyword or 2. And then we have the link, and with the link option you actually link your thumbnail to whatever you like. I usually create portfolio inner pages. Some people will need an image as a portfolio inner page. Some people will need a video, some of you will want to have a gallery or a slideshow or a full web page like a project for your portfolio. Or you want to link to a Facebook page or a website. So as I said, you're completely free to link to whatever you want. And if you want to link to another Muse page, you have to enter the page file name over here. So let me explain what the file name is. Let's say I create another page, and let's say I call it next page. You want to right click over here, select page properties, and in the options you see here the file name. It's actually different to the page name because the page name can use capital letters and spaces, which file name can't. So I untick this, copy this file name over here, retick this and say OK, and then I go back, and if I want to link to that page, I paste that link over here. And it's important to have .html after the page file name. So this will now link to my next page. And if it doesn't work when you preview, it's because you have to preview the site in browser, so it will export this page. And you can of course link to outside pages on the web, like Facebook or whatever you want, by simply copying the URL of the page you want to link and by pasting it over here entirely. So that's it. That's how we insert items. Next is the fonts. we have three sets of fonts. That's for the navigation menu font. Then we have the fonts for our thumbnail, we have the heading and the paragraph text, and I will show you how to load a font. You can use any font you like from the ever-growing Google Fonts library by simply clicking on the link we have provided for you over here. So click over here and this will take you to Google. And let's say I want my menu to have Open Sans. I will click this plus icon over here. It will say one family selected, then click on this. Now we can customize the font, and that's great because by customizing we can save a lot of page load time. We can make our page load faster by simply choosing the one type of the font we want. So if we want italic light, we don't need the entire 12 versions of the font or how many the font offers, which will dramatically increase the page load time. You can see if I load the entire font, it will slow my page. So let's say for the menu, I want this extra bold version over here. I will just select the extra bold. And you can see the number over here, 800. We need to remember that. Some fonts also offer language support, so you can select that as well. And when you're done, you can click embed. The first link we're looking for is over here, between these two quotation marks. I will copy it, go back into Muse, back to fonts, and paste it over here. So I've pasted it in. And the next line we want is over here. That's the font family. We copy that and we paste the font family where it says paste in the font family. And since we've selected the extra bold version, we're gonna set it to the extra bold version. And make italic is no. We would have set this to yes if we chose an italic version of the font. So you can see right here the font has updated. And let's say I wanted it to be italic. Let's do that. In the customize option, I would say, let's say I wanted semi-bold italic. I would say this. You see this I over here and 600. We need that link again. Everything between these two quotation marks. And let's paste the new link inside. Then we need the font family. We already have it. And we need to tell the widget that we want our font to be italic. So we'll open the fonts and say 600 since it was 600 and make it italic, yes. And now we have Open Sans italic semi-bold. That's the same principle for the thumbnail fonts, which I won't change right now. And let's see what else we can set up. Now we have the styling options. First we have the text alignment. You can set it to left, right and center. Then we have the portfolio background color. It will go behind the thumbnails, and the best thing to do is to adjust this color to the portfolio thumbnails label color. Just remember that. We've gave you an option to choose, but the best thing to do is to use the same color here as the label color. Then we have the thumbnails hover speed. You can play around with that. We've already set it to a pretty neat effect. And we have the wrapper color, and you know what the wrapper is. That's the large header area over here. And since we have the image loaded, we can't see the color actually, but let's change that. Over here in more styling, I've loaded the image and I've made it parallax. So let me just show you that live. You can see that the header over here has a background image and that it has a parallax effect on it. And right here you can see the label color, and when I hover out you can see the black color kind of appears over here. That's the portfolio background. That's why I told you to adjust it to be the same as this color, as the portfolio label background color, so you would keep the effect nice and neat. And since I already have the parallax background image over here, I want to remove it, and let's go back to Muse. I will turn it off. Where it says add background image to menu wrapper, I will say no. And now you can see that our menu wrapper has the black color, which is set over here. I can choose whatever I want. Let's give it kind of a blue color. There it is. You can set the opacity. I won't change it right now. And we have the navigation menu color, and that's this over here. The menu spans across the entire wrapper. You can see it has 0.1 opacity, so you can barely see it over here. And we have the navigation padding, and that's this space between the menu and the wrapper edges. So if we say 0, that will completely remove the wrapper. Let's see how that looks. Now we just have a simple menu over here, which is great if you don't need a large header. And let's continue working. We also have the navigation alignment, and that means it will snap the entire menu to the left or to the right side based on your decision. And we can set the menu height. It's currently set to 30 pixels. Then we have the active menu item color and its opacity. Then we have the menu item color in its normal state and its opacity, and we have a hover state for our menu items and opacity as well. I'll keep this color. I'll change my menu color to this pink color and I will give it full opacity. Let's set up something for the hover state. Let's give it something darker. Okay, now we can preview that. And here it is. This is the active state, this is the normal state, and here we have the hover state. Then we have the navigation menu text color. You can set it for active, normal and hover states. And then we have the portfolio thumbnail styling. We have the thumbnails label color in hover state, and we have thumbnail text color for both the thumbnail headings and the thumbnail paragraphs or subheadings. So let me change those colors, and let's say in hover state it will be red. I'm not trying to win the best design award over here, just showing you what can be done. And let's leave the text white, and in the hover state let's make it yellow so we could just see the effect. I will preview this later, and let's go over the more styling options. You can turn on the borders for your menu, and that means we can turn on the borders for menu items. I won't do that now, you can play with it if you want. We wanted to give you as much customization options as possible. Then we have the round corners as well for the menu items, and we have the menu wrapper borders. And if you look over here, we have the border thickness. Add the border to menu wrapper is set to yes, and only the bottom border over here is used. Because all these others have 0, you can see that the bottom border is 5 pixels thick, and you can see it over here actually between the menu wrapper and the thumbnails. You can see the 5 pixels of this color over here. If I change the color to red, you'll be able to see it. Here it is. You can choose the thickness, the color and the opacity for each individual border of the menu wrapper. Then we have the menu wrapper background image, which was already used and which is used by default. So let me quickly go over those options as well. We have an option to use the background image or not to use it. So if we are using it, it will load the image. You have the option to set it as a cover image. You can set it to initial, which will use the default Muse option, or you can say contain. If you set it to contain, then you'll have the option to tile the image, and then you can use a pattern image to spread a pattern across your wrapper area. And you have the parallax option if you want your image to have the parallax effect or not. And you have the position options, and that's where you want your image to snap within the wrapper. And finally we have the divide menu and portfolio sections. It's set to no. It basically means you can add space between your menu and your portfolio thumbnails. So let's say if we set it to yes, it will give 20 pixels of space between here, because this is set to 20. Here it is. And let's see what we have now. As you can see, we have our red border over here. We have our portfolio items. I set this color to green and my text is white, and in the hover state it turns to red and my text turns to yellow. So that's what you control. And finally we have the advanced option, and we've added this option specifically because as of the latest update, Muse loads the scripts asynchronously, which means it sometimes interferes with the widget's code. So we've let you have an option to delay the widget effect by a number of seconds, which will make sure that the widget code is loaded after the page is completely loaded, so Muse won't interfere with our widget. And it's explained in detail in this text over here. And finally we have another important thing, and that's to, when you're finished with your portfolio, just draw a blank rectangle and place it at the bottom of your footer and make sure that the object is in the footer. Because if you don't have anything in your footer, because of the widget's height responsiveness, it will sometimes influence the footer height. So the best thing to do is to simply have a safety object in the bottom of your footer on all breakpoints. Let me just put another object over here and give it some color so we can see it. And now if we preview, you see the load time over here. It was set to 2 seconds, but it says over here that my page loaded in 0.23 seconds. So I could have set this advanced option over here to a smaller number, and that completely depends on the amount of design you have on your page. If it's a larger page, keep it a larger number, and if it's a smaller page, you can decrease this. So let's say put it to 0.7 seconds, but have in mind that people will be coming to your website from mobile devices, so personally having this set at 2 seconds is a safe play. So let's preview now. Now it's much quicker, as you can see. And in the footer we have our object over here, and that's the Filterable Portfolio Thumbnails widget completely set up. And that's it.